Good to go? Good evening. Welcome to the Morrison County Board of Adjustment public hearing for July 25, 2024. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. A few items to cover before we get started. Please sign in at the door if you have not already done so. There you will find a detailed handout of the step-by-step procedure we will follow tonight. If you wish to take one, please put any electronic devices on a silent mode at this time. Also, please note all testimony is being recorded for the record. Members of the Board of Adjustment are appointed by the County Board of Commissioners with one member from each of the 5 commissioner districts. Land Services staff is here to assist the Board of Adjustments with its duties. The task of the Board of Adjustment is to consider requests for variances and appeals from an order, requirement, or decision made by a county zoning official in accordance with the state law and county ordinance. Each request is considered on its own merit. The burden of proving a practical difficulty rests with the applicant. If a variance is granted, it is granted to the land, not to the landowner. There's a protocol for how we will proceed tonight. For each variance request on the agenda, we will hear a staff report, testimony from the applicants. The board will discuss and gather more information as needed. Next, I'll ask if there's anyone in the audience wishing to speak to the request. I will ask each party to come to the podium, state their name and address for the record, and give their testimony. Please be as factual as possible and direct all statements and questions to me. After all testimony is complete, I will close the public hearing portion of the process. The board will then review and discuss the case in terms of our finding of fact criteria as required by Minnesota statute and county ordinance. We'll have a series of votes to discuss whether conditions be made and have a final motion to approve or deny the request based on those findings. After this final vote on your request, you may leave if you wish. So we have 2 agenda items for tonight. The first one, Bryce Home, no property address at this time, application for a variance to develop a parcel that cannot support a type 1 septic system located in Morrill Township. Is there a representation for Bryce? Please come up and have a seat. Thank you for your time tonight. Can you state your name and address? Well, I suppose there's no address on this one. Just name for the record.
Yep, Ellie Holm.
Thank you. Amy, staff report?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Again, this is a variance request to allow the development of a parcel that cannot support a type 1 septic system. It's located in section 11 of Morrill Township. The ordinance references for this request is 1301.12 and 1501.4. Here's a plat map of Morrill Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here's the variance request received from the applicant. And then a site drawing also provided by the applicant, along with a survey. And then here's an aerial photograph of the parcel, and then some oblique imagery of the parcel as well. Here's some site photos that were taken on the 21st of June at one of the site viewings. So this 20-acre conforming parcel is located in section 11 of Morrill Township and was created via a court-ordered split in 2023. Because this land split went through the court system, the ordinance was not applied and reviewed by the Land Services Department. In a typical split, the proposer must show adequate soils to support a type 1 or standard septic system to create the lot. If the soils are not suitable, a deed restriction prohibiting development must be recorded or a variance must be granted to develop the parcel. The applicant had a septic system designer on site, and he could not find an area on the proposed parcel where soil conditions would allow a type 1 system. The applicant requests a variance to develop the lot and install a type 3 mound septic system. A type 1 septic system is one that is designed according to Minnesota Rules 7080 through 7080-2200 through 2240, and these systems utilize the on-site soils to provide septic treatment and are considered standard systems. Drain fields must have at least 3 feet of adequate soil to provide treatment of septic effluent. Type 1 systems include trenches, seepage beds, and at-grade systems. Mound systems can also be type 1 if at least 12 inches of the soil is utilized for treatment. The septic designer has determined that adequate soil separation does not exist on the property to install a type 1 system. For a type 1 mound system, at least 12 inches of separation between the soil and seasonally high water table is required. Those 12 inches of soil contribute to the 3 feet of soil treatment needed. 7 to 9 inches of separation was found on this site. When soil conditions do not support a type 1 septic system, a type 3 system can be considered. A type 3 system is one that deviates from the requirements in Minnesota Rules 7080, 2210 through 2240. These systems are considered alternative systems and have minimum design requirements in Minnesota Rule. In the case of a type 3 system, the entire soil treatment area is above the ground surface and the underlying soil is not relied upon to provide any treatment. There is wetland on the property, and the Morrison County Soil and Water Conservation District was on site and determined there was adequate area to construct a home. So here is a map with the wetland layer turned on, so everything in color is wetland. And then here is the email from the Soil and Water Conservation District and the area that they were looking at for a building envelope. The applicable comprehensive land use plan goals is residential goal B1, and then here are the objectives. And then also an agriculture goal A1 and A2. And then the comprehensive water plan goals and objectives, groundwater goal, and the objective D, and land use and development goal. 26 notices were sent regarding this request. No comment was received prior to the hearing. And then here you're finding of fact and decision questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Amy. Any adjustments, anything to add to that?
Not really, nope.
Okay.
Everything was covered.
Perfect, thank you. One quick note for visitors on the property. I and George, were you Monday?
I was there on Sunday.
Sunday?
Yeah,
Okay,
21st.
Sunday for George. I was there Monday, and then the other 3 and staff were
23rd, I'm sorry.
23rd. And the other 3 and staff were there on Friday the 21st. Okay, I'll open up for the board. Questions?
Mr. Chair.
Clint?
So Amy, can you just go through a little bit? Okay, let's say the split was done, if they come in and just were able to just split it through the county. I'm a little bit confused by what the difference is between that and when it's court ordered.
Sure.
Or would it be allowed to build there?
So when someone is looking to split, the first stop that they make is then to our office. And what they provide prior to splitting is they provide a survey and soil boring information. So what we're looking at is to make sure that the parcel meets the design requirements, minimum parcel size, width, all of that. And then we're verifying per ordinance that the site can support a type 1 system. We do a certificate of review saying that, yep, this looks good. They go ahead and record it and create the parcel. They come in and pull permits, and we're good to go. When a court orders a split, none of that happens. We don't review for lot size. We don't review for septic suitability. We don't review any of that. So the other thing too is, so say someone is coming into us and maybe they're not planning to develop it and they don't need the soils, they don't care what the soils are. Then we require a deed restriction to be recorded along with the split. So they can still create the parcel, but they have to record a deed restriction prohibiting development. And if down the line they want to develop, then they would need to come in and show adequate soils for the type 1.
Okay, so for this particular one, if they would have came in ahead of time, let's say, and tried to split it, you wouldn't allow it because there wasn't soils that would meet type 1.
We would have allowed the split if they agreed to record a deed restriction. Or they would have had to come here to get a variance
Yep.
to create the
Okay, so it'd be the
parcel.
same thing.
Correct, except for this parcel is already created
Yep.
where they would have made the stop here before they even created the parcel. We would not have allowed it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just a point, I guess, so on my site visit, I was kind of surprised on the vegetation there because there was basically no wetland vegetation. There was pine trees and I saw some birch, and so I guess looking at from that, I guess I'm a little bit surprised that there wasn't enough 12 inches of soil.
Mr. Chair?
Amy.
If you look at the map in front of you, that wetland kind of goes like this, so really where you were looking was not wetland, it was upland, but still probably the water table is really high. So just because you've got a high water table doesn't mean you've got wetland conditions everywhere, it's that there's just no separation.
Mr. Chair,
Marv.
so Ally, I went ahead and brought this up to you earlier about the practical difficulty. Did you and your son talk about that anymore? Did you ask Land Services more than just practically a court-ordered split? Do you see anything else that could possibly be used as that practical difficulty?
I don't think so, but I guess I'm not a pro at this. This is the first time I've dealt with it, so.
And that's always a touchy subject when we're up here and trying to, think of that practical difficulty. And as we put up, Land Services puts it back to the owners is saying, okay, bring it forward what you have for a practical difficulty.
So as far as practical difficulty, what is that exactly?
Amy, would you take a moment and maybe possibly shoot some things out there that could possibly?
Mr. Chair, I'm not going to manufacture a practical difficulty for anyone. That's not my role. But what I am going to do is, it's the answers to all those questions that you answered in your application. It's all of those together. And it doesn't contemplate personal need. It doesn't contemplate anything except for things about the property. So essentially what you're looking at is what is the intent of the ordinance? So really what we're looking at is
Yeah, then I
why
feel
does,
there's nothing.
so the question is, why does the state require, because this is a state standard, why does the state require new parcels to have the ability to support a type 1 system? Okay, so that's what you're asking to deviate from. Why does the state require that? And in this case, the property doesn't meet that.
Yep.
So even though you're not meeting that, is your request still in harmony with the intent of that? So you're looking at, the intention is to make sure that someone has adequate area and adequate soils to develop and support the septic system needs of the property. That's typically that's the reason the state requires that, to make sure that someone doesn't have a substandard lot that doesn't have anywhere to go with a septic. And so we know that a type 3 system needs to be installed here, so even though you can't meet the type 1, I guess really what we're asking is this still in harmony? So that's the first question, is this still in harmony with the intent of that? Is proposing to develop a piece of property that can't support a type 1 system, is that reasonable? That's the next question, okay? The next one is, if we have a property that can't maintain or can't support a type 1 system, does that maintain the character of the locality? Are there other properties in the area that are in the same situation? Is the reason why you need this or need to develop on this piece of property unique to that particular piece of property or circumstances. So I guess that's really, and those are the questions you already answered
Yeah,
in your,
right, I was gonna
in
say,
your
I have
application.
those in the
Yes.
application, so,
And so these are the same questions the Board of Adjustment is going to go through.
okay.
Yeah.
So, thank you much, Amy. I appreciate it. I knew you could do a much better job at explaining it than me. Ellie, you've seen well, you grew up right next to it.
I did.
And I would assume the property that your dad's living on there is probably no difference in separation of soil there too.
No.
Does he have a mound system?
He does,
Okay.
yep. And then, I guess it made me feel good when, Soil and Water came out and he, took samples in a lot of places and he felt it was completely fine. So I guess I'm not worried about the area itself, because yeah, it's how it is out there.
Okay. And as George said earlier, and I was surprised, you looked in that ditch and it was much lower than where the intent for your son to build on. And there was very little water in that. But then, at times that water table gets higher.
Right.
And you explained at that one time where that water table was that high when they did the test. That's why we have to have that separation.
Yep, yep,
So,
okay.
so if there's anything else that you could add to it, that's what I'm asking now.
Okay. I think with what the questions were and I answered it, that's about all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Amy, so when you're looking at this figure right here and you're talking about, you said this was the area that they looked for in order to identify a building envelope?
If you look close, I don't think I can zoom in anymore. This square
Yep.
right here, so when the Soil and Water Conservation District went out there, they had the applicant show them, where do you want to build? That's where they took their soil borings, because one of the questions that we ask in the development review team meeting is, usually when you've got a high water table, you need to also, because the ordinance does not allow development, creation of a parcel can't support a type 1 system. So when you can't support a type 1 system, then it's a fair question to ask whether it can support development at all, because that means it's wet. And so typically when we have someone in this situation, the Soil and Water Conservation District then is going to go out to look at, because this is an indication of where the wetlands are. It's not a hard and fast where they are. So that area, that square that you see there, that's what the Soil and Water Conservation District reviewed to take a look at is, do we have wetland here? Do we have adequate setback from a wetland to allow development as far as for permitting? So that's what they looked at out there.
So when looking at the state guidelines or the state regulations.
Yes.
The need for a type 3 septic versus a type 1, why have an alternative? Is this, what would be an example of a use for a type 3 instead of a type 1, an alternative approved by the state?
So it's recognized in the state, in certain areas of the state, that the water table is very high. And so if you have, for example, an old system that needs to be replaced and it fails because there's inadequate separation, the only alternative might be a type 3 system that's completely above grade, and that's really meant for properties that are already developed, that they're gonna be here. You need to have some sort of septic treatment. And so that's why it's there. They're called what are they, Sharon, what is the name what is the term in the septic? I'm spacing on the term, but when you put in a type 3 system, then the property owner is acknowledging that this is not a standard system and they accept the liability for that. So, it's really a relief valve in the state law for when there isn't really any alternative, because there is a design standard for mounds, and it's really creating the drain field above grade.
Understood. Thank you. Board members? Okay. We're going to move on to the public input section of the meeting here tonight. Yep, that's all right.
All right.
Yep. Anybody wishing to speak, please walk up to the microphone, state your name and address for the record.
Bethy Jo Murphy, 36598 Nature Road, Hellman, Minnesota. So, as it was mentioned in the staff report, this property was a court-ordered split. So it was actually called a partition in kind. So the property to the west of it is a cookie cutter where both parties were awarded equal value properties. So I would just like you to keep that in mind during my factual statements to follow. Traditional septics treat sewage better than most other alternate systems. Having a site currently undeveloped that cannot support a type 1 septic system, allowing an alternative system that will require increased attention to operation and maintenance as treatment becomes more sophisticated and technical, the need for monitors of its performance increases as well. These alternate systems may require more space, and with approximately half of the property roughly classified as a type 1, type 3, and type 6 wetland, space seems it can also be an issue for this site after a driveway, home, garage, etc. is constructed. The alternate systems are not as superior as what the traditional systems are. They don't have the same type of design criteria, which can also lead to nitrates in groundwater sources, well water, sewage surfacing in the yard, nearby ditches, or wetlands. As Amy had stated earlier, they're alternate systems for a reason. Chapter 7080 regarding septic's intent is to protect public health and water quality. Because there is no current structures, it seems unreasonable to support a request for an alternate system versus a system that can be permitted without this request. As mentioned, the property to the west contains a cookie cutter layout, characteristics such as the wetlands and soil types. I would suspect a type 1 system may potentially not be found to be supported there as well. Would that go through this variance process, and would that be supported if this is where we have multiple alternative systems in a wetland, high table, water table area, non-perkable area? Land uses are not lost. It was purchased as bare unbuilt land with what seemed to be no self-protection, such as a perk test showing or supporting a traditional septic system in an alternative site location as part of the purchase agreement pending. This is done civilly and could have been done to protect the purchaser. Other uses still exist. It can be used as has been for countless previous years, bear hunting land, or it could be used as pasture land. There are absolutely no existing structures on site to support the need for an alternative system. This isn't the last lot of a subdivision outside of a residential area. This is egg-zoned, unbuilt, rural in nature, signaling the soils no support of a traditional system. And that's all I have.
Thank you. I got to ask 3 times. Any other public comment? Any other public comment? That was the third and final. We'll close this section of the meeting to the public. Okay, on to the fact of finding questions for the members here. Question number 1, we're going to start with George.
Mr. Chair, I gotta ask her one more question real
Sure.
quick. Ellie, if this wouldn't go through and he wouldn't be able to build there, what's his second plan? Buy a different piece of property and try and build, or?
Again, like I had stated before, I was unaware. I came into the courthouse looking for a building permit, I guess. Unfortunately, as you can tell, there was issues before I got involved. I'm not, I mean, he's already spent the money on it, I guess hoping to build there because eventually it adjoins to his grandpa's property. He wants to be out there by my dad. He's the only child in our entire family that has any interest in being out that far. So yeah, I guess we got all the plans drawn up and he was hoping
Okay.
that that would be his future home, but.
Okay.
And I do, I understand there isn't any properties on that parcel, but there's not a lot of properties on places that get sold, and the intention is for most people to build a home, I would assume. And the other thing with the alternate system, it would be interesting to see in that area if anyone has a drain field still, because I know when my dad did have to upgrade, it's a mound. I mean, we all know it's wet out there. It's a very wet year. And like we had said when we were out there, even off where he wants to build, for as wet of a year it is, I don't feel like it's undoable. And I mean, the plan of building up the property, you know, so it's gonna be a slab on grade home. There's no basement. I don't think it would be a problem. And no, I guess that's what he bought the land with intentions to do.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Marv?
I'd like to make a comment. In the last few years, we've, in this particular area, not very far away, we've allowed a few different type 3 systems, new homes being built around there that didn't pass also. And one in particular that was a little bit south, that it was actually out in the field, and we were concerned about taking land out of ag use, and the owner's intent was to continue to have the land farmed all around it other than the 1 acre parcel which you were building on. So we've had allowed some of this in the past, and every piece is unique in its own, and we have to take that into consideration. But I just wanted to make a comment we have.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else before we get going?
And
Go
can I
ahead.
have one more comment?
Yes.
With his intention to, I can guarantee once his dwelling is up, he is a hunter, I mean, there's no intentions of clearing any more land than he needs for that house, and that's actually why he went off that immediate driveway that's already kind of there. So there is less of the trees and everything that he would have to take down. It's not like he plans on going in there and clearing out the entire, part of that hunting land.
Thank you. Okay. If no further comment or question, we'll get started with the finding of fact criteria. Start with George. Question 1, is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan?
Yes, it's a 20-acre vacant lot, zoned ag, wooded and swamp to the west and southwest. It's by no means quality ag land. There's no tillable land, and there are no feedlots nearby.
Thank you, George. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to add that it's probably not written in our ordinance or comprehensive plan, but in the last few years, talking with this board and the commissioners, I think it's the county's intent that we want to preserve as much ag land as we can. And with that being said, that's fields and things like that. Here's a piece that's ag that you ain't gonna farm ever. We're gonna have people build houses in ag. Yeah, it don't match up with the borings, but when we go out and look at the property, it's kind of shocking that you couldn't find a spot for to put a type 1 because it's high. Like George said, we're wet this year. There's no water in a ditch. I have experience. I live in an area that's high water table, and half of my land is in the flood zone, and so is everything within 3 square miles of me. And I would challenge how some of these other places have septics in their places, because right today, there's water in their yards. The boring shows, so it makes you wonder sometimes. But anyways, my point is that this is a suitable place to put a house out in ag, because its elevation it don't match the boring, but it also protects high quality farm ag land.
Thank you, Clint.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to use goal A1, and that's to ensure the county provides and protects areas most suitable for strong, stable agriculture. Like Clint mentioned, it's definitely not a strong agriculture piece of property. It's hunting land, probably a pasture land, and not limited to just crop production, animal husbandry, dairy meat or production, pasture lands, or similar uses. So you're not taking anything out of ag in that respect, and I go along with Clint's comments there. I agree with that totally.
Thank you, Marv. Okay, moving on to question 2 to Clint. Is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance?
I might believe so. It's a 20-acre parcel. Yes, there's wetlands on it, where the proposed building site and the sewer site would be. It's the highest elevation, I believe, in the property. Again, stated earlier, we didn't see a lot of water or anything around there. He's not looking to develop the whole 20-acre property. It's just something out by the road to put a house. And I understand that having troubles with the soil borings and not being able to put in a type 1 system. But I think what he's asking for here is really is reasonable. There's enough land right up front there around that building site. He could put 40s in if he had to, if they failed. That's one of the things we look at to make sure that there's another site that you could redo one of these if the need arises, because we got to understand this goes forever. So I do think it's reasonable.
Thank you, Clint. Anybody else? Okay, question 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Well, as we heard from the applicant and as you had referenced up here, and you look at the actual lot itself, when you go out and visit, there's a house tucked in across the road. Sounded like Grandpa was right next door there. That's tucked back, and it's not like you're crowding on top of one another, and it looks like any other rural setting or rural home in the county, if one were to be put up there. That's what that lot appears to be. Any other comments? Okay. Question 4, to Marv. Is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property?
Well, this one's pretty iffy, and I question it, and that's why I was hoping Ellie would come up with a better answer with that, and we're not up here to manufacture it. One, but as what was explained by Amy, being a court ordered and having to come in through to get a variance, you would have to come in one way or another. But is the court order making it practical difficulty? No. What's making the practical difficulty is years ago there was a high enough water table and left it that way, and there was markings of it, so it doesn't support a type 1 system. As we were out there and you could see that there was no water standing nearby, so I'm really questioning this one yet, but the one what I say is years past, there was a high enough water table. Was that left before it was ditched that way? I don't know. That's all I have at this moment.
Mr. Chair, I would just add to what Marv said. I guess if I was looking at this practical difficulty, what it would be if we just take our answers for the first 3 questions that we did and how we define the answers to these, I think that's the practical difficulty here.
Mr. Chairman?
George?
I guess, I'll make one comment on this. I don't know that if there would have been a different split there, if there would have been a spot for a type 1 septic system. I guess that's kind of where I'm at with it.
Mr. Chair, could I add a,
Not right now.
nope, not right now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Brent?
I think I'd kind of go along with the parcel being split by court order does, kind of make a practical difficulty here because it bypassed a lot of the county ordinances that are in place. And so it puts us in the position to have this discussion tonight, absent it being created by the court, we wouldn't maybe even be here. There might have been another avenue followed, and it may not have been allowed, and we may not even have the discussion. But the reality is that it was ordered by the court prior to there being any determination or soil borers for a type 1 septic being suitable. And so that's been done. Now we have to deal with what's been done. And in dealing with what's been done, they have to make an application for a variance. They've done that. They're following the rules that are now in place after the court has determined the split. And they find out that it's not suitable for a type 1 according to the bores that were done. And now we have to consider a type 3 system for the site.
Thank you, Brent. Okay, moving along. Question 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Brent?
Just restating what I just stated, again, the parcel split by the court order, the actions by people other than the landowner or landowners is the court. The court's made a determination to split that land, and now they created the parcel that we're dealing with, only to find out that it's not suitable for a type 1 septic system. So the application for variance here is to support, to allow a type 3 septic on the site. We've heard that there's 7 to 9 inches of soil where the bores were done. Is it possible that there could have been another site there that was missed that had it? That's certainly possible, but we don't know that to be the case. So we're looking at a type 3 system. It could be the actions. It could be the actions of the bores that create the situation as well. But certainly, it's the action of the court that created the land split, which has got us here discussing this.
Thank you, Brent. Anybody else? Okay, question 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? George?
Yes, I guess, stating what we've been stating, there is really no spot on the parcel that will support a type 1 septic system, and that is why we're here tonight. There obviously, a type 3 system is actually a little bit more expensive to install and also more expensive to maintain over the long term. So I would say answer to that question would be yes.
Thank you, George. Anybody else? Okay. Before we go to the vote on each of the questions, any conditions that need to be applied to the variance request here? Okay. Moving along with the...
Mr. Chair, can I make a comment?
Yep.
I don't think any conditions need to be stated, as soil and water was out there, and they stated their case that they had no objections with the type 3 system and meeting all the setbacks, so I don't think so.
Okay. We'll go to the vote. Question 1, is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? George?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Me as a yes. Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Question 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? Clint?
Yes.
I, John, is a yes. Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Question 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? I, John, yes. Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Question 4, is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
I, John, is yes. Question 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Brent?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
I, John, is yes. Marv?
Yes.
Question 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? George?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
I, John, is a yes. Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
So all the questions have been answered to the affirmative.
Mr. Chair, and make a motion that we approve this variance request.
Okay.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made by Clint, seconded by George. All those in favor, Brent?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Marv?
Aye.
Clint?
Aye.
And I, John, is aye. Okay. The motion carries to approve the variance as requested. Staff will work with you on your options. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, agenda item number 2, David and Teresa Von Bank, 7539 Cottonwood Road, Cushing, Minnesota. Application for a variance to add on to a non-conforming structure in the Scandia Valley Township. Thank you for coming in the application, and please state your name and address for the record.
Teresa Von Bank, 7539 Cottonwood Road, Cushing, Minnesota.
David G. Von Bank, same address.
Okay, thank you. Miss Amy? Staff report?
You bet, Mr. Chair. Again, this is a variance request to expand a non-conforming structure located in Section 30 of Scandia Valley Township. The ordinance references for this request is 706.1, 706.1A. Here's a plat map of Scandia Valley Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here's the variance request received from the applicant. And then a site drawing also provided by the applicant. Then here's the stormwater plan provided by the applicant. And the impervious surface calculation and the shoreline assessment. Here is an aerial photograph of the parcels outlined in blue and yellow. And then here's some oblique imagery of the property, along with an image from the shoreline. Here are some photos that were taken at the site viewing. Again, the property is in Section 30 of Scandi Valley Township on Lake Alexander. The property comprises 2 parcels and is a conforming single lot size, which means it's at least 120 feet wide at the lake and 30,000 square feet in area. The parcel is 200 feet wide and 36,000 square feet. And then here is the full parcel outlined in yellow and blue. According to the assessor's records, a 1,778 square foot dwelling with a full basement built in 1972 exists on the property, and it is 44 feet from the lake. The applicant purchased this property in 2014. The applicant requests a variance to expand the dwelling with the following additions: to installation of 2 dormers into the roof line on the existing home, increase the roof pitch of the most lakeward portion of the home from 212 to 8.712 to match the remainder of the existing home, construct an attached 1,104 square foot garage with living space in the 2nd story, and construct a 516 square foot 2-story home addition. The additions would meet the 75-foot setback from the lake. The total above-grade gross living space would increase from 1,778 square feet to 3,914 square feet. Let's see, this does not include the 1st floor garage space, and I believe the applicants want to make some corrections to that. The total number of existing bedrooms is 3, and no additional bedrooms are proposed. And the home is served by a full tank and drain field septic system that was inspected and passed. The proposed impervious surface calc is 16.9%. The Morrison County Soil and Water Conservation District performed a wetland delineation on the property and identified wetland areas. And then here is the site map from that visit. An approximate 48,995 square foot building envelope exists on the property, but that does not consider the wetland and setbacks from it. And then here is that drawn in. The applicant did attend a development review team meeting, and here are the notes from that. And then the comprehensive land use plan goals is natural resources and open spaces, goal C2, shoreline development, goal D1. The applicable Morrison County Comprehensive Water Plan goals and objectives is the surface water goal, objective B, land use and development goal, objectives B and D. 73 notices were sent. 4 comments in favor of the request were received prior to the hearing. I'll read those. All right, the first one is from Sherry Nispel. We are the property owners of the home that is on the east side of Dave and Teresa Von Bank. They have a hearing tomorrow evening, June 25 at 6 p.m. to consider their application for a variance. My husband, Mike, and I are completely fine with their plans for their modifications on their property. We feel the variance is appropriate and should be allowed in this situation. I do not see that their modifications would affect any neighbors or affect the lake in any adverse fashion. I hope you will consider my comments. We were on vacation and just got the notice. Okay, let's see. And then Robert and Mary Kay Burfind. We are neighbors of the Von Banks on Lake Alexander. We are in support of granting their variance request as it will not have a negative effect on the properties nearby, including ours and the lake itself. And then here's one from John Hunt. He owns the cabin directly to the west of the Von Banks. He says, I do not have any issues with the construction of the non-conforming structure. And then a phone call from Shirley Moldy, and she stated she was in favor of the request. And there are your finding of fact and decision questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Miss Amy. The corrections she referenced?
Excuse me. May I give Amy an update copy?
Please.
With signed, so she has it for
Yep.
the record?
Thank you.
So the plans that were shown in the proposal, those are all accurate dimensions. What happened is we were trying to get the structure, proper septics from the septic and the lake. We got it there, but we didn't go back and update the impervious surface calculation. So what ended up happening is the numbers that were shared in the staff report are larger than the, what they actually are. So I don't know how much detail you want me to go into, but I'll just hit the key points. In the total area column, the second number is 460 rather than 516. The garage size, the fourth row, is 1,024, so slightly smaller. And the net of it is the impervious surface is 16.8, so it really doesn't affect this, but it does impact the size of the structure that was reported in the staff report. And the net result of that is the garage is about 8% smaller, the total gross living space about 5% smaller. And then one other thing that isn't reflected in the staff report is the second level, because of the roof lines and being able to see the lower level from the upper level, reduces the square footage by quite a bit more. So the net living space goes down about 11% when all those things are considered. So that's our correction.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Board members, opening it up to you for a question, comment.
Mr. Chair,
Clint?
so I'll get to a question, but first I got a comment. So each one of these are unique. You know, every applicant's different. But now we just looked at one that we're worried about groundwater because of a sewer system and all that on a 20-acre parcel. Here we have a parcel that's 48,000 square foot building envelope, and the cabin's too close to the lake. That's not your fault because that was there before you, and we're looking at adding on to it. And you can have a septic system there, but we all know that 100% of the water that runs off and runs into the ground and makes it to the lake. So with that, when we're looking at possibly doubling the structure, okay, so we're really worried about the shoreline, we're worried about the lake and all them things, okay? So I know we talked a little bit at our site visit. So I guess what I'm really interested in to know is the vegetation along the shoreline, what kind of plan you had for that, or to help slow down that water from getting to the lake and that. Because I know you talked about guttering and you're gonna push everything to the back side of the house, not lakeside, as you can, except for that short little piece of roof, and you're gonna put a water barrel there. But what kind of vegetation were you looking at to kind of help out that bank?
So we had soil and water out. Mike Becker gave us a pamphlet with suggestions. We're looking at something that doesn't spread too much, but generally that green area there, that's the area that when you're out, you saw how the water had risen, washed away our sandy beach. That's a particularly difficult area because the west wind, it swirls around and it kind of digs in there. So we're thinking if we could plant something there, it would control the erosion. So we don't have specific, yeah, right there. So basically that area where the rocks are, we'd like to put some, that's normally dry in most years. So it would have to be something that can survive in that sort of environment, but it's going to have this situation. So we don't have a specific plan in mind, but that's the general idea.
So then if we'd put a condition that you would work with an expert in that, you'd be fine with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Amy?
So I just want, how many feet of shoreline do you have?
We have 200 total on the two parcels.
Okay, so you have 200 total feet of shoreline, and how many feet of buffer how wide are you looking to buffer?
You mean from perpendicular to the lake, away from the lake, or?
Yeah, well, it looks like, and I'm just gonna go to, oops, give me just a second here. It looks like you've identified this area. How wide is that?
That's roughly the width of the prop. It's about 40, I would say about 40 feet.
Okay.
So we want to keep Sandy Beach to the east, and we have a very good solution with the riprap to the west, and then there's a bunch of cattails on the far west edge.
Okay, so 200 feet of shoreline, 40 feet of buffer? 40
Yes.
feet wide, okay.
Yeah.
Are you saying 200 feet of shoreline between both of those parcels, or you're saying 200 feet just the parcel the house is on?
Both parcels.
Okay. So you're talking 40 feet of what looks to be like,
I believe they're 100 feet wide each.
Okay.
And so if you look, it's this right here.
Yep.
okay, thank you.
Let me,
Yep.
Mr. Chair, just quick. So when we look at the other parcel, when we were there, like he stated, there's cattails growing in part of it. There's a riprap. I did look at that riprap that's around there. It was kind of tipped up a little bit so the water can't just run into the lake. So like my personal concern is the 100 feet of shoreline that, where their house is. And then there is a little bit of riprap there with the rocks being just a hair higher that would slow. So he answered it for me. And if we can have him work with an expert on this to get that taken care of, that answers my question. So
Perfect, thank you.
Mr. Chair, okay, the original house was built in 1972. So when we're looking at this home, like it looks like there's a little bay window, and was that ever added on, or was that the original, was it built that way? Because it looks like that could have been added on, and if so, what year was that done? Can you?
We don't permit windows, so I wouldn't be able to
No,
tell
no,
you.
I'm just wondering if that addition, well, it looks like you have a steeper pitched roof, and next to it looks like lakeside, there would have been a possibly addition put on. Was there anything in the
I
records?
don't have any permitting history.
Okay,
I
yeah,
don't know that. When you were, I don't know, when I was out there, and I don't, if you're seeing this too, but that foundation looked like the same foundation all the way around. It didn't look like it was a different color. And there's, even when they try to paint those, I don't think you can't really blend those in.
The property owner might know, even though they
Yeah.
don't own it then.
May I address
Yeah,
that?
please.
So we do not know for certain, but the full basement cited in the county records does not start at the front of the house. It starts 60 feet from the water. So there's 16 feet toward the lakeside that is a crawl space. And
Okay.
so I suspect it was added on, but I don't have any record of that.
okay, and the reason why, we're in the shore impact zone. And that area you talked about putting on top of that, in part of your proposal, are you still planning on putting that addition on top of that in the shore impact zone?
Yeah, that is part of the proposal still. The bay window would go away, so at least that glass would be 2 feet back.
And then you would be adding on the top side of that too?
Correct.
Okay. And, yeah, as we as Clint was mentioning earlier, we'd like to see more filtering being done. You know, the riprap will do some, but when it rains hard, and everything is gonna run right to that lake. And what, was actually gonna be proposed, Darren was out there, and I don't know if you filled out that form, but yeah, you got a relatively low score there. And which we don't like to see that. So anyhow, them are just comments I have right now, and may have more questions later on at this point, or later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Marv. George?
So, looking at the shore impact zone, so we always try to avoid intensifying use in a shore impact zone. So was there any wiggle room on you guys giving up adding on that roof on the portion over the shore impact zone?
Wiggle room in our proposal, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, not putting on the 8.7 to 12 roof, leaving the portion that's in the shore impact zone as is. I mean, you are allowed to, you could rebuild that area in the shore impact zone 1 for 1, but you're changing it now. So would you be willing to walk away from raising that roof?
Yeah.
Yes, I guess the answer is, yeah.
That does help me out.
Mr. Chair?
Amy?
So we're considering this as one, and so one request with all of these different things. So I think if the applicant wants the Board of Adjustment to consider something different than what you've proposed, I will need for you to amend your request verbally tonight as far as what it is that you want this Board of Adjustment to consider. If you want us to recess for a bit to chat about it, certainly fine, but they're gonna consider what your request, your whole request.
1 second on that. So you got that though, right? Good. So when you're looking at the roof line, whether it's at the pitch it's at, or it's at they add it to match the rest of the house, what is the difference in impervious surface and what is the difference in where the rain is currently going as you're seeing it?
Well, I go back to one that we did here a couple months ago. And they were gonna add living space under a house. They were gonna tear down a house and build a new one and add living space under a house, which is intensifying the use. And this is kind of the same thing because they're changing what's there. That's kind of what I mean, it doesn't change the impervious surface at all. It doesn't change anything else, but it does change dimensions, height-wise and stuff in the shore impact zone.
Mr. Chair?
Right, so, okay.
The speed at which the stormwater will move will be faster also because the pitch will be greater. So the water will move faster on a higher pitched roof. So if you have water moving here, that's moving faster down than this. So you will be moving stormwater faster on a higher, steeper pitched roof, closer to the shore impacts, or in shore impact zone as well. So those are the two things that change.
Okay. Are we not guttering these?
We are guttering them, yes.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm just throwing this out there for discussion.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I
No,
guess,
no, and
I mean, I'd like you guys to weigh in on it, that was where I'm at with it. And I mean, the
Yeah,
rest
this
of the stuff they're adding is in the building envelope, so I guess, and then they are gonna do some other things that, get the water away from the lake and that kind of stuff,
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I believe the dormers and the roof expansion are not, those are the two things that are not in the shore impact zone. We do not redesign these requests, so I don't want to spend a lot of time going back and forth amongst you guys about what you want to request, what you don't. It is the applicant's request. This is what they've put forward. I don't want to beat this up with the group a whole lot about what you will and won't do and what you want and what you don't want to see, because that's where we get into that redesigning and all of that, and we stay away from that. So I guess really it's up to the applicant right now what you'd like to do. Do you want to amend your request, or do you want us to recess for a short time so you can discuss? Or would you like the Board of Adjustment to consider what you've put forward?
We have to make the decision right at this moment, or do?
The only other way is we would have to continue it and kick it down the road another 30 days.
Yeah, give us 5 minutes.
Could we recess for a moment, please?
Yeah.
We'll recess for 5 minutes then, Mr. Chair?
Yep, recess.